Welcome everybody here tonight, both on Zoom and on YouTube. It's good to see some old friends here and new people as well. I can't see any of you out in YouTube, so if you want to say hello to anybody, write it in the notes and hopefully we'll hear from you. We've got two people who I I know not as much as I often do. I've read with Jenny in the past. I've read Doug's work and talked with him on Facebook and read some gorgeous poetry. And this is going to be another really nice traveling Molly's. One of these days, we're going to have go live and we won't be able to get people from Michigan and Massachusetts. And so I'm enjoying every minute of this that we can. So tonight, Jenny Mulberg and Doug Anderson. And before all that, there's going to be our open mic, and I'm looking forward to hearing what people have to say or have to write. Al DiGenova is not with us tonight. He's off in Mexico. I don't even know what to say about that. So what we usually do is we start with the hosts reading a poem, and I'm going to read this one. It's called A Matter of Opinion, partially because, Doug, I love your love poems and love gone wrong and stuff like that. So I think I will do this one called A Matter of Opinion. And it's set, by the way, on the coast of California. And it's, you know, if you've ever driven down US 1, you'll recognize the curves. It must have been the wind, how we argued our hairpin way down Highway 1 from San Francisco to LA, squabbled through the cloud-heavy summer of '87 and didn't let up as we segued down that curving coast, me rolling my eyes as you studied every item in the snack food section of the Rite Aid in San Jose. And we kept at it clear through Monterey, barely noticing the gnarled old cypress pointing the way through the mist. How we split so many hairs over who hurt who worse along the cliffs of Big Sur that we sped past the entrance of Esalen, those sensuous sulfur baths and therapeutic hot seats of human potential. And how I got so angry when you called us friends instead of lovers after all those on again, off again years that I left my favorite sandals beneath the bed at the Motel 6 and was damn sure it was all your fault. How you left me outside the mission at San Luis Obispo, and I left you on a beach in Santa Barbara, which was your fault too, and you probably mounted a logical argument to the contrary, and I couldn't hear a word of it. That we drew back desperately to each other as polar opposites are known to do until we got so lost in LA and fought over which way to go. Forgiveness, a gift we were both too poor to give. And it was all those tedious cliches, how we never had sex enough to slake you, that you could never make me come and kept trying till I was raw, or that you hated how my nose ran from crying over the time you slept with my ex-roommate, even though we weren't exactly involved at the time. Or the irritating way you sat on the bed at the same Motel 6, reading your little red book of inner child affirmations, implying I was a threat to your superior serenity. But it was really the whole thicket of Michigas impossible to wade through, and nowhere a sickle wide enough to cut the underbrush away. Tonight, the drunks stumble blithely out the door of Molly Malone's, where I stand and think of you, securely ensconced on the East Coast, and me with my poems packed in a suitcase for tomorrow's flight back to a state not of mind nor of grace, but something approaching affection for wind, a wind that erodes everything crossing its path, and a road that cleaves to the question mark curves an ocean has carved in our cliffs. Thank you. All right. So, hi there, Anne Marie and Kate. I don't know you, but I'm glad that you're here. And Mike Pewican, you don't look very much like Mary at all. And so we're going to start up with the open mic, and nobody's going to know who's going first until I tell you. So how about we get started with Jim Madigan? Jim.
Okay. So I'm going to read two poems tonight. And one of these poems also has some California references in it, Nina. So this first poem, however, does not. It's called The Clash in Cleveland. As we were leaving the apartment, a hot chick was arriving at Davies upstairs. His type, young, sexy, and married. Always married, he says, no worries about entanglements. Kudan and I were off to the Agora for the Clash concert. The only band that matters, said the stickers on London Calling. I certainly thought so. When the Clash were interviewed in the newspaper of the Revolutionary Communist Party after the release of Sandinista, I cut, pasted, copied, stapled to make my own Clash zine for free distribution at music stores and punk venues. Joe Strummer, artfully dissecting US imperialism, both military and cultural, while fully conscious of England's own bloody history, was a wonder to behold and well worth spreading. The concert did not disappoint. They opened with the battle roar of Clash City rockers, dug into reggae and rockabilly. We danced our asses off, sweat pouring off us. I wonder how Davy did. And then the second, the second is called Fire Season. In the moonlight, it looked like gentle snowfall. Powder sugared streets and sidewalks in Boulder, Longmont, Loveland, almost glowing. In the morning's close inspection, it looked like the downwind of a crematorium. Smart money says the West Coast will crisp before it quakes off into the Pacific. North along the Franciscan Friar cities to Portland, there are now 5 seasons: spring, summer, autumn, winter, and fire season. Fire season sends its toxic ash on contrails over the Rockies. Visibility is a quarter mile. Adjust your goggles, protect your eyes. Airborne particles sting. Children cough. Their eyes water, not enough to extinguish a blaze. The market moves to adapt. Fire season street celebrations. West Coast Mardi Gras, another masked holiday. The season will be over before we begin the next, Day of the Dead. Tomorrow relies upon the lodgepole pines and their eastern cousins, jack and prickly pines. Nature, more adaptive than market, pine cones closed by resin, releasing seeds only after heated by a forest fire. Thank you.
I want to say something to that, but I can't quite put it in words. I'm really glad you wrote that poem. So next, how about Patty McMillan? Patty's one of our regulars from Molly's Live. So let's hear what you got.
Okay, thanks. I have two new poems. I think I'm going to try both of them. The first one I will introduce with a Gertrude Stein quote, which isn't actually in the poem, but it just came to mind as I was thinking about this. Before the flowers of friendship faded. So this is called Disambiguation. Next time I tell our story, I'll tell everyone the same thing, whether it's true or not. I won't say we met online, and I won't say I fell in love without ever meeting you in real life. I'll say I picked you up in a bar during COVID time, that our eyes met as we sipped cocktails through straws stuck under our masks, which we kept on in case of a police raid. I'll say the owner made each party come to the counter when their number was called, leaving drinks on the table and pretending to pick up a pizza, exiting through the back door where a kid dressed in chef's whites took the box and sent them around the block to re-enter the front door, sit back down with their drinks and wait for their number to come up again, while in the kitchen, the kid reheated the boxes for reuse. I'll say I was feeding quarters into the jukebox, that you asked me to dance and I said no. That part's almost true. But I let you sit at my table, breaking the 6 feet apart rule. I'll say I fell for your eyes because they brought out the blue of your mask. I'll say we talked intermittently until midnight, then went our separate ways, that I've still never seen your mouth, your nose. I'll say we're friends, nothing more. I'll tell everyone the same story this time, including myself, especially myself. And thank you. And this is called Puppy's First Spring. On the green field, the robins are feeding on remnants of worms brought up by the weekend's full moon. Puppy pulls at his leash at the edge of the park. He only wants a closer look at such strange small creatures. He doesn't yet know what it means to fly away. In the afternoon, the temperature will fall. The worms will be gone, the robins too. I'll let Puppy run free, dragging his leash through the lush grass, tiring himself out so we can both nap. And thanks.
Thank you, Patty. And sorry for the pauses. I'm just going back and forth with this mute thing. And this is high tech for me. So, all right. So who next? How about Deborah Edelman, who may be reading us prose and maybe reading us poetry tonight?
Thank you, Nina. It's prose. I've been writing a series of about 1,000-word vignettes, and I'm going to read another one tonight. And I just want to say, I think my sister is in the audience, and this is a piece about our family. So I just want to say hi to my sister, and this is kind of going out to you. And I just say about these vignettes, I've been trying to write in first, second, and third person to different people, including to myself. This is a second person one. It's called Pesach, year 5770. Why is this night different from all other nights? On this night, Grandma Jan is late for the first time I can recall. Traffic from Highland Park all the way down. On this night, Ronaldo is on time. A miracle, like the 8 days the oil burned at the temple. A year from now, at his memorial, a friend will remember how Ronaldo had once shown up at a party at 3 a.m. just as the last guests were getting ready to leave, but they hadn't yet, so the party went on. But on this night, he arrives at Susan and Jim's, just on time to wait for Grandma Jan. On this night, I have to beg permission from the hospital authorities to let you leave so you can join the Seder. It seems easier to get you and bring you back on foot rather than fold and cram the wheelchair into the car. I don't look up to the heavens when I am on the phone with them, negotiating the terms of your release. I walk over to fetch you from your room at West Suburban, only 4 blocks away, under the gathering gray clouds, shifting wind, and the promise of rain and a storm too close. On this night, I sign a paper promising I will return you, my father, by 10 p.m. On this night, I push you in the wheelchair west along Erie into the wind as we hear the first rumbles in the sky and see a distant flash as the storm moves in. The asphalt is smoother and easier than the sidewalk, and so I wheel you down the middle of the street at a run, my heart pounding, arms aching, hoping to beat the cool April rain on its way, not wanting you to catch a chill in your weakened condition. On this night, the C. diff infection inside you that had started to shut down your kidneys is in retreat, dying bacteria annihilated by massive IV infusions of antibiotics. The C. diff is drowning like the Egyptians, and you cross the parted waters, survive, make it to the promised land of at least one more Seder with us. On this night, we run west together, laughing wildly because we can, because we are together, because I have sprung you, because you have lived, because we wonder what picture we present to the passersby in their cars. A woman in her 50s, hair graying at a run, pushing an old man in a wheelchair down the middle of the street, panting from exertion. Anyone might wonder, what are they fleeing? Is he being abducted? Is this a kidnapping? Is there a ransom? Will somebody call the police? Or from their cars, can they see how my face mirrors yours? Can they see that I belong to you, that you have given me my dark eyes and narrow chin, the stubborn curly hair, the same propensity to laugh at absurdity? On this night, a tempest descends upon our town. Dark clouds and flashes and cracks of lightning strikes nearby, confuse day and night. I do not know if I am remembering the Passover story or if I have actually entered it, have become Miriam, Shifra, Pua, and Pharaoh's daughter, setting you afloat, pulling you back to the shore, to safety, to this night at Susan and Jim's, to this warm home, to this Seder table piled with good food, to this circle of daughters, grandkids, sons-in-laws, and friends. On this night we gather, we eat matzah, we eat bitter herbs and dip them twice in our salty tears. We recline, we retell the story, we sing the songs, drink the 4 cups of wine. We talk of justice and liberation, mix the maror and the haroset, the bitter and the sweet. We set a cup for Miriam, we wait for Elijah. You have taught me to do this. The left-wing Seders of my Milwaukee childhood, the collection of non-conforming friends you and Mama cultivated, where shortly after 67, someone at the table declared, next year may Jerusalem be unoccupied. There have been so many Seders, the tellings and retellings, the socialist, the secular, the feminist, the anti-Zionist, Haggadot, always the yearning for some new way to hear this ancient story in hope that the next year might truly bring in something better. I have done this my entire life. So how is this Seder different from all other Seders? On this night, I choose my seat carefully, you on one side, Reynaldo on the other. I want only to feel the warmth and presence of you both and not sit across the table where I would have to notice how thin Reynaldo has become, how his smile is not quite as bright, how I see the pain deep in his eyes, how you have become serious and anxious, how the last 3 months of hospital, rehab, nursing home, hospital have worn you down and confused you, though always when I explain what is going to happen next, what we have to do to make you better, you accept humbly, meekly, even though you hate each place more than the previous one, because you are willing to do whatever it takes to stay with us in this life. This Seder is different from all other Seders because I am confused about what is safety, what is liberation, what is release, what is the promised land. I cannot say to my kids what I know is the truth. Soon you will not have your grandfather or your uncle. On this night, when the Seder is over and the storm has moved on, I wheel you back to the hospital. It is getting close to 10, the curfew I have bartered for your presence at the Seder. I have wrapped a blanket around you, and now we walk slowly, enjoying the fresh air the rain has brought. You are quiet. Halfway there, I spot the bright lights of the hospital ahead. I am overcome by the urge to turn around and run. You are so tired of hospitals, and so am I. If I took you back home, after all, what could they do? Arrest me? On this night, I violate the lesson that you have taught me and retaught me over my entire life about resisting authority. I don't turn around, but rather meekly, obediently deliver you back to West Suburban, even though I know how much you detest your captivity and the emptiness of the hospital bed you will lie in tonight, recounting the evening. I surrender you in the wheelchair to the aide who greets me, and I am thankful, grateful to your captors, the ones who stick you with needles and draw your blood and put you on an IV drip and check your vitals every hour. I thank them, your captors, your saviors, the ones who have returned you back to life. It is Pesach, and it is bitter, and it is sweet. Thank you.
I love that. I really do. There's a woman in the elevator where I was getting my tests done today, who was an older woman who was saying what a blessing it was to have the vaccines so she could be at her senior center and everyone could hang out and end their isolation. Good, better days are coming. Although we said that before the insurrection, and now. All right then, so who next? How about Rusty Russell? So glad you made it here tonight.
There we go. Technically challenged. You can hear me, I assume. Boy, I hate bifocals. After the carnival, the taxi driver is mystified. How do carnivals keep going against common sense and despite the impossible cost of living? The families ride home, tip him modestly, and vanish into their lives. Later, at the counter in the diner, a woman chewing gum takes his order. Waitresses glide through space, carrying meatloaf and cracking jokes and flirting as they pass. The dessert case hums and bathes extravagant pies in unnatural light, and he wants a slice of all of them. A phone complains, someone answers, someone else sorting silverware sounds like something breaking. How do they live on minimum wage, he wonders. How do I? On nights like this, we pull each other through. Maybe we do it without thinking, but there seems more to it than that, like the deliberately focused inattention of tightrope walkers. Don't look down. One foot, then the next, don't look down. You want to believe it can be done. You want to believe, and that's the secret behind every broken heart, every used car sale, behind every sideshow on the Midway. The sideshow barker knows you need to know that the bearded lady is grotesque and unlike you. You need to be amazed in a poorly lit tent. The bearded lady needs to believe this is just what it seems to be, and it'll all turn out okay. She'll sleep well tonight and dream of Georgia and the smell of apples. The barker walks to his silent trailer, pulling off his coat as he walks. The little monkey that helps him pull in the families waits inside on top of a dresser with only one drawer. He has taken off his red fez. When the barker steps in and drops his coat on a chair, the monkey will jump to the bed and look up, expecting nothing. The man will sit on the same side of the bed that he always does and take off his shoes without looking. He'll brush the monkey aside, turn off the light, and stretch beneath the blanket, all without a word. As he falls into sleep, he'll fling out a hand, where the monkey is already waiting. The water, the wind, and the window. The blindfolded prisoner pushed from the plank 20 feet above the sea, remembered a white curtain trembling in a window that he watched a woman close above the sidewalk where he stood 20 years ago in Mexico City, an ocean away. The time it takes to hit the water is the time it takes to close a window. He had never seen so many couples kissing in the park as he did there. You come to take it for granted until you leave. Men rode sweethearts in small boats across the lake in Chapultepec Park. The sunlight off the water was blinding. The women wore white sundresses that waved like curtains in the breeze. The women trailed their hands in the water. Some closed their eyes as if they thought of nothing but water and breeze and the warmth of the afternoon. Not really thought, but surrender. Gulls cried overhead, so far from the sea. They ride the wind inland to the city and they stay there. They watch the people in their boats drinking wine and nibbling bread and grapes. They watch the pieces they drop into the water. Then they dive so quickly you don't see them until they strike the surface. The time it takes to hit the water is the time it took to close a window. And very shortly.
Okay, I'll say it again. Rusty, think. Oh, a short one, did you say?
Yeah, 30 seconds.
Go for
Thank
it.
you for flying. There will be 10 more minutes until the end of this world. Please check the area around you so you don't forget anything important. On behalf of the frog, the twilight, the rain, and the entire crew, I'd like to thank you for joining us and noticing. That's really all there was to it. Wasn't it wonderful?
Ah, that was definitely worth it. Thank you. Let's see. Who next? Caitlin, are you ready and up for sharing your stuff?
Yeah, sure, certainly. Happy
Great.
to. I'm going to read 3 poems. This first one is called In the Dream. I could make the milk froth tides rise and fall with a smart little lever, so I guess I was the moon. I worried about the small children who walked too close to the water's edge, so I suppose I was also God. Later, when I had a body, I read a book whose author was mad I hadn't read it all, but everything inside the book was about me. I had been hurt in meticulous ways. My children denied me or swept away by the water, so I did not need to read about the many brilliant ways men have invented to do harm, and so I know I was a woman. This next poem, thank you. This next poem is called Miscarry. The president's spiritual advisor called for the fruits of satanic wombs to miscarry 2 days before I discovered the blueberry growing in me. 4 days before the moth wing of its heart stopped winking in double time. Every time I write moth wing, someone whispers mothering, turns me into something I am not. The stained towel strewn on the highway is not a crane from the nearby marsh. Notice I avoided the word stork. Storks have no syrinx, which is one way to say they have no voice. Cranes are very vocal, like the pair I watched on TV to numb out those first weeks. 2 brothers. Everything is babies. Grief is a hollow whose depth never changes, a perfect post hole for a fence love wants to build but can't. How's this for satanic? I kept the jar of good blood like a beating heart. Let it loom like red meat in the fridge. It was cold. I am cold. Damn the heart-shaped teratoma they lift from a friend's empty womb. Damn the president, full of teeth and hair. Hers was no child, but could have been for the awe it seated in her. It might be a letter that never reached its destination, quite simply not carried, slipped from the mailbag like a leaf, grown quiet as a moth's wing, still beneath its own dust. When our letters are delivered in this world or another, I imagine the someone who reads them. Thank you. It's not as good as being together, but seeing the little hands clapping is very nice. Thank you. This last poem is called Portrait of the Only Child as Bad Penny. The therapist listens to my autobiography and says, "You are very resilient." Let me live up to that. The zodiac gives me a poisonous tail and a hole in the ground to keep my soft inside soft. Let me be as formidable, as balanced as all that. A bad tattoo of a good idea, serpent destroying herself back to life. Let me satellite my head a little to drink up one last punchline, a final squawk. In deep winter, let me be the squirrel scrambling up the jack pine and the snow sparkling down as it tries. Give me a chance to come back again, weed that looks like a flower, that looks like a weed, insisting between the brick pavers, I belong. Let me be the bad penny, bronzed to oblivion, just north of worthless, tossed on a nightstand. God, rid me of this loneliness, multiply me. Give me as much of myself as you can. Thanks for listening.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, Mary, Holly, why don't you read next? And I just want you to know that you and Mike are welcome to do a full 5 minutes because we have one person missing.
Oh, cool. Well, I'm going to actually just read one poem, but I will introduce it then. So that'll take up like at least another half a minute or something. This is a brand new poem. I've been doing this project with a poet named Sylvia Goldman, who she writes in Spanish, and it started that I translated one of her poems to English. And then she wrote a poem in response. She pulled a line out of my poem and wrote, I translated her poem to English. I wrote a new poem in English, pulling something from her poem. I sent that to her. She translated my poem to Spanish and wrote a new poem in Spanish in response to my poem. So we've been doing this chain going back and forth, which has been really cool. And so this is the latest in that one. This is my poem. It's called In This Hour, and it begins with a line from her most recent poem. And the line is, hay enormes maneras de leer. There are enormous ways of reading. In this hour. A woman reads in a corner on the edge of the world. Her light is the sun on a string. She reads the shadowed folds of mountain ranges, the fall and rise of water in pursuit of the moon, the scudding clouds. The woman has tired of fires and flags and pestilence, of evil in the cheap robes of fame, of how the mending, the holding together are never mentioned. Only the movements of armies. What is missed when they speak of nothing else? The wind is a long vowel. She is alone, no child, no lover, no mother. In this hour, her solitude is not a deprivation. In this hour, her thoughts wheel like a murmuration of starlings over a darkening field. Soon she will pull down the sun for the night, glad no one is there to remark on it, no one there to devour her, no one who will dismantle the sunset, stripping one color from the next until the sky is blank. Thanks.
All right. Good to hear you writing poetry. Have you been writing poetry for a while, or have you been sticking with the prose up until recently?
I've really been working more on fiction for the last while, but this project with Sylvia has got me back into writing poems. So I'm glad to be doing that.
Good. One more reason to see you. Robbie, Nestor, let's hear from you.
Okay, I'll just unmute myself. I have 3 short poems. I'll start with this one from my book, Narrow Bridge. It was released in 2019 from Main Street Rag. Night Visitors. In dreams, the dead do not remember who they were. Their faces stay the same, but not their feelings, fractured in the fall from flesh. Their eyes are glacial, words few and dismissive. It would take a locksmith to make the tumblers fall in place and let the doors swing free again between us. Life swaddles us in plush, in all the rich distractions of the world, sunsets that signal as they pass their message of mortality, mornings when we cherish each brief breath. But it seems that once they've gone, the dead see only tied off ends, the underside, and not the pattern of the tapestry. No wonder they're disgruntled, sundered from these riches, gaining access only through our dreams. Thanks. Here's a relatively new one. It's called Van Gogh's Ear. And it has as an epigraph something from one of Van Gogh's letters. Normality is a paved road. It's comfortable to walk, but no flowers grow on it. What else would he be doing besides standing in a dark field, listening to a carillon of stars vibrate in the night sky's vaulted chapel, or wavering in the darkened surface of a river? He'd stumble on the unpaved path, wishing the spirits would be silent. They'd rise in choruses out of the trees, the grass, the thick green stalks of irises and sunflowers, wheat fields after harvest, trilling like tree frogs, an orchestra of light, impelling him to lay the paint on thick, impasto, to shout in loud blues and yellows from the campus. The spirits rap on the small drum of his tympanic membrane. He harvested his ear to make it stop. Prophecy is a burden. And my last one is from Aeolian Harp. I'll be doing a reading along with other people published in this anthology on Thursday at 4 p.m. on Zoom. This is called Worst Fear. Halfway through the revolving door of prose, I see poetry disappearing into a crowd. It happens in the old Wanamaker's department store on Market Street in Philadelphia, long since closed. While I am stalled by the throng, she slips smoothly by in her neat summer frock and enters the gilded elevator. where she stands, framed for a second, silent and composed, before ascending forever out of my life. Thank you. It's good to be here.
And good, have a great reading on Thursday. What time will it be, Central Time? Oh, you said 4? All right.
4 Pacific, so what is that, 6 Central, 7 Eastern. And you can find it on my public page on Facebook.
Right.
Thank you.
Let's see. Who next? Leonard, how about you? Leonard Lund.
There we go. Finally wanted to unmute. Evening, everybody. I'm doing my 8th iteration of the annual poetry fundraiser that I do for St. Baldrick's once again. And these are some samples from that 30-poem, 30-day exercise. After Biarritz, 1957, a photograph by Alberto Schomer. It could be February in Biarritz or an early June day in Denver. There could be much more snow. It could be raining instead, foggy, or the midday sun near blinding, or none of these. Imagine what could be. It really doesn't matter. She envisions safe places, a child's playground game, where touching the water spout or standing on a certain brick, a traffic island or sidewalk, confers protection per the rules from whoever wants to touch her. This is what the girl child's world, innocent as a parent's hand, becomes with the process of growing. Everything, each one a danger. It could be this afternoon or 1957. It could be just after the garden. It really doesn't change anything. Thank you. After Cutting a Sunbeam, a photograph by Adam de Stone. The other children follow a snake's line around the small classroom. Paper hats for uniforms and obedience. Above the scuff of worn shoes on bare dirt, they sing a doggerel in some foreign language, understanding really only the teacher's smile. Marie Claire, her hair falling free of folded deadwood, has other business. Standing completely tall on a small stool in the shadowed furnace room, she raises woolen shears to find what might be revealed if she cuts the room's single shaft of sunshine during its fall from skylight to floor. If she tilts the universe by just a few degrees of adolescent creativity. Thank you. Despite the title, this is not first draft. First draft of to-do list for future lives. 1, become an astronomer, student of the night skies. A geologist, deciphering the secret life of Earth. Perhaps a digger after truth, brushing time from potsherds. 2, learn to draw, to paint, to make movies and act, compose and play. Drown out the sounds of strife with possibilities of peace. 3, live long enough, perhaps, to be a poet, a different kind of digger after truth. 4, remember to forget pain. Remember to remember joy. These are not the same lessons, but are concurrent acts. 5, find you again. Your love, your smile, the ways we save and recreate each other, the way you hold my heart crossing winter streets. as if this needed saying. Thank you, everybody.
That was beautiful. Getting some love poems in here tonight. So we have two more people in the open mic. I think I'll just throw in here that one of our poets for next month is Matthew Oltman. I'm really looking forward to hearing his work. And for those of you out there on YouTube, we meet every month on the second Monday of the month at the same time. So, Anne Marie O'Connell, always good to hear you.
Thank you for having me. Sorry. Dad always screamed, "Never let someone fuck you up unless they're paying you. It is what is written that is dangerous. To put everything spiritual away in boxes. What does it mean to be awake? Last night, I brushed 2 razor blades out of the ragged nest of a psychotic woman's hair. She held my arm and said, "I don't like this flower. Do I have to like it?" She stared directly in my eyes, slid her wedding ring off her finger and swallowed it. Her breath in that moment is life in the background. Bad rain. Here's to a fear of drowning. Here's to a bottle of assorted pills for pushing. Here's to a G-Pack that got her to prison. Her breath is the goodness of life in a thunderstruck of happening. Some call it seasons. It's not thinking deeply about living your life as it resembles a life. Dad worked 80 hours a week for 41 years. Even when the tiny bolt struck electric in his heart, it was over before we knew it. The same way a link between all this disappears, like a deep shining in the pit of your body, a quick diamond. Did you think of me when Justin Townes Earle died? At first, I thought of heroin and the way I laughed at the sight of you shining lotus white with 10 petals, fawning all over yourself, copping dope on the west side. Triangular and so suburban, I first told you to get out of my tracks. More differences between us, a mother and a father, decked with various ornaments, bailing you out, and above that, hearts, clothed with power to create, but also to destroy, the South Side bad girl raging in the center of me, poorly dressed, poorly fed, backed into a chain fence. What's the use burning in the middle of the day? What's the use moaning like 1,000 beggars if you are frightened by the sound of my hunger? The day my son called you dad, you disappeared into space in great leaps, a herd of gazelles. Gazelles get so lucky shedding the heaviness of earth. Me, I tried to love and I failed. I put my heart on a shelf. The terror is still beauty on the path that got me nowhere. I was sentencing myself to death long before I knew you. When I was 18, I almost died twice in the same week, but I stuck around like leftovers on the stove, trash in my mama's grave. After you left, I cried in her gambler's hat. I wish I treated her better and never took a drink. I want to tell you 2 things you will act like you already know. A bullet is something you can't get back. A herd of gazelles barely touch the floor when they run. And I'll read one more. The way you pulled apart a blessing as if it had teeth and could bite, like the heartsick girl who got a piece of my thigh at the group home and broke through my skin when she finally let go. I would say go to hell, but hell is disjointed and clockwise, like backwards the other way. All my forsaken desert sheets filled with boys like men, the beginning and the end are the same sweet music. Separate darkness from waves. A life starting and failing still shimmers like sugar. I pull at the calendar to take me with the spine of your wallet and keys, walking out the front door. I meant what I said. I wanted to be the river because it runs. Once you asked me about joy and keeping all these appointments. Time has serious ideas. Time is beauty. Beauty is not men, but a seed of gesture growing inside me. Every second is small petaled, oil down lilac as my neighbor laid up under his Mustang with a 12-pack of old style waiting to go to rehab. I think this is what my mother would say if she still existed. It's the dirt underneath that's the wonder. It's my cleaning outfit and a grudge, learning to fly.
Oh, man. It's always great to hear your stuff. Thanks for being here. And we're going to wrap up with Mike Purikin, who just had a book. I don't know if it's just, maybe it's been about 8 months, out with Northwestern Press. I hope I got that right. Mike. Mike, are you
You're
with
muted, Mike.
there
Ah,
we go.
there it is. Ah. Now you see why my name says Mary Holly.
Right. Okay. Got it.
Because I need help. Yes, and thanks for the plug, Nina. The book's called Central Air. It's been out for about 5 months. But I'm going to read a couple of new things. The first one is called Prediction. Mike Purikin, you almost forget your own name, yet are certain this day will end. Maybe it won't. Maybe your name's really Stefan or Madison or Witch Hazel. Maybe it really isn't dusk with night on its way, but all the time. You wait for the voice of the muse, which is metaphoric, while your situation outside snow, inside sweatpants and coffee is metamorphic. And your name is Penn Dexter. Speak for yourself, Penn Dexter, and not for your already lived thousands of days that ended in night. Look at all you've accomplished. Lunging into the train just as the doors close. You invented that. Daydreaming during a work meeting. You invented that too. Isn't it annoying to have so little effect on the future, your football team, your career? Mike Purikin, you can call yourself voice of what is yet to come if you want. It's the future. It could happen.
Nice.
The next one is called herd immunity, but it's not immunity from COVID-19 that we're all hearing about. This is immunity from a different disease. Hairstylist, machinist, St. Francis and the broken mule, Geraldo and the wedding party, come and rest from your long, difficult journeys. The shepherds will protect us. Let the domestic armies, the slogans on street signs, the cars ablaze in the night, the shouts from prison windows, the songs of street mobs, let them become nothing. Let our sins of omission fall away. The images that linger without our consent. It is time to go to sleep. Let us lie down with the herd. Thanks.
Mike, thanks for wrapping us up
Sure.
today. And you did make me think. Now, Mike is someone who, I don't know if you started as a slam poet, but he's made a really natural progression from there. And I'm saying this as a segue to say that in August, I believe, Northwestern, which has put together an anthology of based on the history of the slam, I believe. Mike, am I right about this? We're going to have people from the anthology here, including, of course, Mark Smith,
Wow.
which should be a really neat evening. So
That's
that'll
great.
be second Monday in August. So I hope you'll be here for that. But now I'm going to do my meandering segue into talking about our features for tonight, Jenny Moberg and Doug Anderson. What I'd like to say is that we believe in poets getting paid. It's a revolutionary idea still. When I think about it, if you divide how long it takes to write a poem by the hours, if you broke that into the cost of a book and divided it by the total number of hours, the poet might get 2 cents out of every book. And that's only once they get past the number that they need in order to get royalties. So we like to have people buy the books of the poets. It's a gift to them as much as it is a gift to you. And if you want, you might be able to pay the poets, because we can't collect a door fee being virtual. You might just find people's information about how you can pay them via PayPal or Venmo or whatever they have. And if they've put that in the Zoom chat, hopefully we'll be able to add that to the YouTube chat. So I really want to encourage you to buy their books. You might want to wait until after you've heard what they have to read, but it's definitely going to be good stuff. So without further ado, I'm going to put glasses on. By the way, that was a fantastic, fantastic open mic. If you want to, everyone put your hands together for yourselves and each other. What a great reading. Everybody's poetry was just beautiful, powerful.
And prose.
And prose. Oh, yeah, right. That's right. I forget about that. I have prose friends, you know. My husband also is a prose writer. And they make jokes about poetry, so I suppose it's okay if I forget sometimes. But I really like that piece, Deb. Jenny Moberg. I had a chance to meet her and read with her at a series called Poetry and Biscuits, run by Carrie Olivia Adams. And she does have biscuits at that reading, but that was back in the day when you could actually help yourself to other people's libations. Jenny is the author of the poetry collections Marvels of the Invisible, which won the Berkshire Prize and is published on Tupelo Press 2017, and also Refusal, which is out on LSU Press, came out last year. Her third collection, The Court of No Record, is expected to appear in 2023. She's an NEA fellow. Her work has recently appeared or is forthcoming in Plowshares, West Branch, the Rumpus, the Adroit Journal, Missouri Review, bunch of other places. And she's an associate professor of creative writing at the University of Central Missouri, where she directs Pleiades Press and co-edits Pleiades magazine. So Jenny, I can't wait to hear from you. Give her a hand, Jenny Moberg.
Thank you so much, Nina. It's great to be here with you and to see you again. And I dream of those biscuits one day.
Oh man. Oh.
Thank you so much to the incredible poets and writers who just read at the open mic. That was such a treat. Your work was fantastic. And to Doug, thank you for reading with me. I can't wait to hear you. So this has been a tough year. For me, I don't know about all of you, but I seem to have kind of hit a threshold this spring. Work is tough, isolation is tough, but I'm so grateful for platforms like this that bring us together and give us a sense of community. I love Chicago and can't wait to visit again soon. So I look forward to a day where we can gather in person and maybe have some biscuits. With community in mind, I wanted to start by reading an epistolary poem from Refusal that arose out of a conversation with my dear friend Caitlin Cowan, who just read at the open mic. We were both at this time, this was probably 4 or 5 years ago, we were both in the throes of divorce, dealing with gaslighting and abuse. And we agreed in a conversation that there should be hospitals, or we could think of them as like old-fashioned sanitariums for our invisible ailments. So the traumas that we carry with us, like what would a hospital look like for that? Caitlin is a really good friend in many ways, but one of the best ways, or one of my favorite ways, is that when we have conversations like this and we say things like this, she says, write that down, that's a poem. So this first poem is dedicated to Caitlin. Epistle from the Hospital for Cheaters. What to do with all this flame, but douse it with paper cups of red and yellow pills. What to do with the sun that licks its rose blaze across the tiled corners of this ward, with all these hours, with the burden of relief we're allowed to feel. We still breathe. We still walk the halls in our spoiled bodies. Once we made a promise in that world of papers and rings and aisles that meant cold prison cell, that meant debt and paranoia and many small failings that took root as we stood in front of judges and priests, our teeth crawling with till death. Gold light razors the plastic blinds. Don't we look so flawed, so lovely? Alone forever doesn't mean shit anymore. Tell me I didn't blow up my life for this means you get dark chocolate and a long hug. The food here is delicious and we're all going to be fine. Here, no one cuts your face out of all the photos. There are no photos. We won't remember this place. Here, we redefine slut as person who survived. When we really hurt, they give us neon casts for all the broken promises. We sign them like yearbooks. The IVs drip wine. In the evenings, we play hearts and watch the sun set on the green and think, doesn't that look like an egg descending a blue tube of sky? One of us holds that sun on her tongue a while. She wants a child, but not her husband's child. Never her husband's child. So in this book, there is a sort of monster or an archetype of a monster that you all might recognize from your lives in literary circles. In this book, he takes the shape of a Demogorgon, which is a monster made famous by Dungeons and Dragons in the TV show Stranger Things, but who also makes an appearance in early literature, so that will appear in this poem. Since this has been sort of a heavy year, I thought I'd maybe try to bring a little humor tonight. This is Portrait of Demogorgon as Poet. Sorry. Portrait of Demogorgon as Poet. The Prince of Demons attends a writers' conference. He travels all the way from the 88th abyss to some woods in America. The Prince of Demons doesn't forget his weed and his condoms, which are only for show. He plans to impregnate everyone. He is workshopping his poem about Ferguson, which he heard about on Human TV. The Prince of Demons' perspective on this matter is very important because hate makes him blush in a good way. Anyway, his poem has a megaphone, so he hears nothing but his own voice. His poem makes the workshop feel afraid. To avoid a violent flaying, not critiquing the Prince of Demons' poems is advised. In his one mind, the Prince of Demons wants so badly to be good, or at least liked, but a softy monster never got anywhere, as his father, the king, used to say. At the craft lecture, the Prince of Demons doodles little drawings of light bulbs and naked women. He sits mostly alone at dinner, shaking his head, chuckling to himself, face unfurling like a corpse flower, exposing his many sharp teeth. Fools, he thinks, all of them fools. Don't they know Voltaire named him creator of earth, that Milton dreaded him, that he is Melville's white whale, that his very name is taboo? He cries like a man goat and closes his face as a fist. There, demon prince. It's not your fault. It is we who opened the portal, who brought you here in the first place. It's because we worshiped you that you grew so strong. So in this book, a sort of modern day Ophelia has escaped the chains of Hamlet and the monarchy in Denmark and set out on her own. She later encounters the Demogorgon, but this poem comes from an exercise I did after reading a critic who said that without Hamlet, Ophelia has no story. And I thought that was probably a crock of shit. So I set out to write all of Ophelia's lines out on their own. And when I did that, I realized that Ophelia is telling a story about gaslighting. So this poem comes out of that exercise. Loving Ophelia is loving loving a ghost. And loving a ghost is loving yourself. And loving yourself is a sudden sorrow. And a sudden sorrow is the place where the river pools. And the place where the river pools is not suicide. And not suicide is confronting the unknown. And confronting the unknown is the active condition of womanhood. And the active condition of womanhood is the beauteous nature of Denmark. And the beauteous nature of Denmark is lovesickness. And lovesickness is obsession with a version of yourself. An obsession with a version of yourself is egomania. And egomania is a room of mirrors. And a room of mirrors is love and hate simultaneously. And love and hate simultaneously is the trick of abuse. And the trick of abuse is a vexation of the mind. And a vexation of the mind is the feeble dawn of gaslight and tea. And the feeble dawn of gaslight and tea is an overbearing husband. And an overbearing husband is a soliloquy of cliches. And a soliloquy of cliches is the misery of scholars. And the misery of scholars is an old friend's skull. And an old friend's skull is a sudden sorrow. And a sudden sorrow is holding one's breath. And holding one's breath is swimming away. And swimming away is the other shore on which Ophelia has woken. So I'll just read one last poem from Refusal, and then I'll read a couple of new poems after that. This poem is the sort of culmination of Ophelia's journey and her encounter with the book's monster, the Demogorgon. So this is Ophelia Slays Demogorgon. The dog will have his day, as some dude once said, and this is it. I return to my brook, pockets full of rue, wade in until its cold hands cup my ankles, my hips, my breasts, my neck, till my hair fans around me like, what else? A fan. This isn't meant to be pretty. All Ophelia as muse, all Ophelia's poetic death. No one paid me for that. I flip over. This, my astral plane, the brook, my sensory deprivation chamber. I close my eyes. The water fills my ears. They are not seashells, but ears. I could hold my breath for days. It is here beneath the water, I do not float, where the world flips. I cross over, swimming away from my body like a soul. Now I walk. Dark the floor, slick, a sickening sound, a wet tail slapping water. I do not need my hands in the dark. I have already been dead. Come, monster. There he is, kissing the child I never had. No, he is stealing her breath. He infects her. With all my rue, I summon my suicide, the rage definite as an incision. Come, channel, come, impossible light. He whines, he curses my name. I've heard it all before. With my mind, I drive into the monster until he breaks. His body bursts, hundreds of black, frantic moths. Then, ash. I am the one who lives. So these last two poems that I'll read are from my new book. During the year of our Lord COVID, I wrote a series of bitch poems in which I don't necessarily seek to like reclaim the word bitch, because I think a lot of really talented writers have done that well before me, but I wanted to sort of like excavate the inner misogyny that leads me to fear bitch or bitchdom, the kind of like shame driven by internalized toxic masculinity. So that's where I was coming from when I wrote these poems. And just a warning, sorry, there's a little bit of or maybe a lot of foul language in these poems. All right. Bitch under a tree eating Wendy's. What is the difference between being unlovable and not being able to love? The pine tree and I give each other breath. But if I'm honest, I only give so many fucks about the pine tree, and it gives zero about me. The pine tree lets somebody else do its fucking. That sounds like something I can get behind. When people walk by, I scowl and bend deeper into my spicy chicken sandwich. I can't do kissing right. I get so aware of a person climbing inside my body, which for so long I've been trying to protect. People say, please don't shut down. But I am too busy noticing the perfect golden yellow of the fry wearing its backdrop of grass. If you look at grass under a microscope, there are smiley faces in its cells. A bitch's body is an oven full of sweets, but a bitch is not a witch. She feels emptier when they're gone. I can't do love right. I keep thinking I'm a fat bitch, which is egocentric. Some love is a capitalist exchange. Bitches get tired of being all whole all the time. Under the pine, I nurse my scar. My scar, a mouth taped shut. My scar, what love does to the body. And I'll just read one more. Bitch interrupts a wedding. This poem is all one sentence, so I'm like, ooh, I need my water. Makes me breathless. Okay. Bitch interrupts a wedding. A black and blue pipe vine butterfly noses the collars of orange zinnias. Something someone might write a poem about. Someone who isn't a bitter bitch. Or most likely a man with nothing else to do but splooge his sensitive musings down a sentence paved with fancy names for insects or plants or birds. Oh, swoon, red-banded hairstreak butterfly. Oh, sigh and hark the yonder black-eyed Susans, the Rudbeckia subtomentosa, the nighthawk and dick sissel. And I stop by a cave trickle of a natural spring where air is cold as a winter tongue or calyx outstretched hand or some bullshit, sidestepping the bikers who have stopped to smooch in the grotto, my hand over my mouth because I have forgotten my mask. So that now, ambling down the charming Victorian Ozarkian streets, I appear to be in a constant state of shock, gasping into my own hand. And actually, I am in a constant state of shock, as I had long ago decided that the universe could only really push a person so far. That if there was no God, at least the world possessed a kind of omniscient fairness, a cosmic balance, trees leaning into wind, meaning in the goo of the chrysalis that turns to prismatic wings, and with one hand over my mouth and the other on the hiking trail railing to guide my arthritic knee, I think, at least there's this lovely respite, gazing onto the green and dappled light as 40 unmasked faces, weird little forest moons, crank upwards, an ivory dress and bridesmaid blue, fall flowers and pews and an aisle, and I hear the minister saying, and now I pronounce you, as the bride in her sparkling white lace waits patiently for this bitch to stop ruining the moment her life will begin forever. And I blubber back up the stairs, picking a piece of mossy bark from my ponytail, and the sun prisms my arms, and a passing hawk darkens the afternoon for just a moment. And I am young, and I am breathing, and praise Ozark Jesus, I am the interruption and not the wanted moment that will pass. Thank you so much.
Jenny, wow. So these last two poems are going to be in the book that comes out in 2023?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it. And folks, you got a good sampling of stuff, and you may want to very well buy books. If anyone on YouTube wants to leave comments and say hi to your friends in here, please do, and we'll share them. And now, having spilled my water, I'll read Doug's intro with a dry mouth. I'm so glad to have a chance to hear Doug Anderson's work tonight. His first book of poems, The Moon Reflected Fire, won the Kate Tufts Discovery Award. I don't know if is that for University of Wisconsin, Doug? I imagine you'll tell us. His second book, Blues for Unemployed Secret Police, earned a grant from the Academy of American Poets. Wow. His third book, Horse Medicine, was published by Barrow Street in 2015. That reminds me of Richard Hoffman because he also had a book that won the prize. His new book, And in Time Other Angels Came, will be published by Four Way Books in 2022. He's won awards from the NEA, the Massachusetts Cultural Council, Poets and Writers, and other funding organizations. His poems have appeared in Plowshares Field, Massachusetts Review, Plume, the Southern Review, Poetry, and a lot of other places. He's written plays, fictions, and his memoir, Keep Your Head Down, which I kind of like to read that. It published by Norton in 2009. He's taught in the MFA programs of Bennington College and Pacific University of Oregon. Doug, thanks for being with us tonight.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me, Nina. Jenny, it was an incredible reading. Thank you so much. You know, these readings have really kept me alive during the pandemic. I'm very grateful for them. I had to cancel about 10 readings when everybody got sick. And so it's good to be able to do this. And I'm getting used to Zoom now. It's beginning to feel like a real community. I'm going to read new poems from a forthcoming book. All over town. I am aware that at this hour, in houses and apartments all around me, people are stepping into their showers. I make the water hotter as I grow used to it, steam rising around me, soothing me, clearing my nostrils. I reach for the soap and lather myself, wash my scant hair behind my ears, remembering my grandmother long ago scrubbing me as if I were a burnt pot. But I'm gentle now, knowing the hurt places I've gathered. I tune myself to a lover's hands, remember the last woman who was good at it. All over town, people are being tender with themselves in this hour between waking and dressing, before putting on the gang face to go to work, before shutting themselves down to the required level of appropriateness, chasing away whatever wisps of dreams might be hanging on. I feel for scars above my eyebrows from fighting, the ridge of my twice broken nose, the side of my face where they dug out a big chunk of cancer, and the long suture marks on my neck where they took the graft to plug it. My throat, a broken cathedral organ of backed up love. My ailing left shoulder, my once proud chest, moving on down to the love handles, to the gut beneath which hide the ribbed muscles. The fading burns on my hands, the pitted flesh from the bullet fragments, now mostly covered with tattoo. My shop-worn cock and my balls hanging all day in the dark by themselves, scheming. My disintegrating right knee, torn ligaments of the other leg, down toward the feet, almost crushed now under the weight of a life. For a moment at this hour, perhaps we are all this way. It makes me sad that we are alone in this holy of holies, grieving the failing flesh beneath which death sits in her carriage, loosely holding the reins. The border. They come across by light of cell phone, by wavering lights and virgin shrines, by blood trail, by the gleam of the coyote's incisor, by the eye in the dollar's pyramid. They come across by dreamlight, by firefly, by the phosphorus mariposa headband of the screen goddess, by the North Star of the Mercedes hood ornament, by the rustle of money like snakes moving under leaves, by bank light, by love light, by the lizard's slow eyelid. They follow Hansel and Gretel's dope trail, leave one witch's oven for another, take on the pelt of our fear. We see them by slant in our gardens. We unimagine their burnt black hands on our strawberries, our oranges. We pull them, yes to the labor, no to the kiss. We want them to bathe, and they want to ease themselves down into the sweet cleansing waters, to be shriven of our sins. In the saint's chamber, we enter by the front door, they by the rear. We light a candle in our ignorance. Oh, guttering flame, we feel in the dark for the saint and touch their broken hands reaching back. In plague time. At the beginning of our quarantine, I fled my house and drove Route 9. Near Cummington, I crested a hill and saw 3 vultures at the center line tearing at a bloody carcass. 2 lifted away, the 3rd stayed. Above its surgeon's beak, a red-rimmed eye in the denuded head held me as if to say, I know you, and returned to its ripping. Another driver leaned on his horn, pulled around us with a glare. We left, the vulture and I. I swung wide so not to hit the carcass and scatter it, thinking of the vulture's broad-winged circuit, the shadow of it coming back to feed. I'm writing a series of homages to Chinese and Vietnamese poets of the Han and Tang dynasty. The poets are entirely imaginary. Poet in exile. Jingu, exiled under the old emperor, received an invitation to attend a feast in honor of the new. He was full of fear, looked at his torn clothes, and despaired of having anything to wear. But 2 men on horse appeared, bringing robes and a tall hat, then took him down the mountain to the feast. When he arrived and was given a seat next to the emperor, he was overwhelmed by the sheer confusion of color and smell. The snowy palm, bear claws and sturgeon, mangoes and monkey brains, and the richness of the wine. The emperor asked him to recite, and so he did. The banquet hall silent. Somewhere a woman sighed. He sat down, lifted his bowl of wine. It all made him dizzy, and his stomach was not used to such excess. When the attendees had become drunk and were singing loudly, he stole down to the duck pond and sat on a bench. He felt in his pocket for a green grape he'd taken from the table, held it up so it was lit by a wavering torch. How extraordinary, he thought, green as the sky and veined with lightning, the lopsided moon just before it halves. I need nothing, he thought, and began his slow journey up the mountain, stopped to cut some bamboo for a cane. I miss James Tate, who passed not so long ago, and who I would run into at intervals on the streets in Amherst. This is called Remembering James Tate. That cow has a guitar, I thought, as I half dozed against the train window. What are those priests doing on the track? The woman smacking her gum in the next seat reminds me of the crocodiles I used to feed pigeons to. Jim, I guess you could call me a hypnagogue. I forgot my toothbrush and will have to use the one belonging to the person I wake up with. How hard it is being human. That woman's husband has installed an electric fence, sits in a watchtower night after night as she washes her breasts in the bird bath. But all last night I was worried. A huge molar stalked the hall on its roots. I love surrealism. I was preaching to the choir, and they said I needed some new material. And I said, the old material is the new material. And they said, you need to change something. Different instrumentation, different outfit, something. And I said, you've stopped singing with me. Why? And they said, it's that old organ. So I installed new foot pedals and pull controls that could make it vibrate all the way through you to the ground below theory, below knowledge, on into something like a soul, where we remembered why and who we were and how terrible the world, and we could smell it, taste it, hold it against our hearts. And they said, that's better. Now, let's start again, I said. Yes, once more from the top. Some songs you can't hear enough. Orchid. Finally, a small wind to move the curtains. Hot in this upstairs room. Outside, the dogs sleep on the cool concrete floor of the garage. I don't know why I'm thinking of you just now. Why you appeared in my mind like a time lapse of an orchid opening. I am naked, sperm drying on my belly. Loneliness locks the door. This is a Gussel, a Persian form that you probably have all heard by now. Reflecting Gussel. Don't feel, don't think, don't give in like that guy in the mirror. Don't cringe, don't cry, don't shuffle like that guy in the mirror. And who is he that I put on like a slack skin each day and head out? Cranky crooner, doomsayer, old flatulator, that guy in the mirror. Dove-souled, lover mind, love this, love that tangerine strip on the horizon and refuse to die. Wide-eyed like that guy in the mirror. Bone dancer, fire-tongued, jangle-brained, and laser-eyed mad fool. Hot-hearted, stumble-happy. I could love that guy in the mirror. Nina, tell me if I'm running up on 20 minutes.
I've lost track of time, but if it feels like you've done 10 minutes, I don't know.
Oh,
Does that,
okay.
does that sound
great.
right?
That's great. Okay.
Okay.
I don't write much about the war anymore, but every once in a while a poem slips out. This is a new one. Black guys called themselves splibs over there. It was a term of respect. Chucks were what white guys called, mainly rednecks, and it was not necessarily a term of respect. Splibs and chucks. He said, don't raise up, Doc. I'm gonna lay down hell just over your head with a 60. And so I started to crawl down the sandy slope with the brother moving those rounds an inch in front of my nose, all the way into the kill zone to work on a man already dead. If you'd seen us, splibs and chucks, all with snake brains on fire, you'd never know we were taught to hate each other in some funky ass bean town in Mississippi. We had a thing, not the politicians' thing with all the flags, but some kind of meaning dug out of the bloody mud to keep us whole and alive, because you need heart to get up and fight another damn day, even if you no longer knew why. Our why was made up out of brotherhood. We fought for each other. Let me tell you something. When a black man is bleeding out, you have to pull back his lower lip and check for cyanosis. Next day, I gladly did. Tried like hell, but couldn't keep him alive. Not one damn day goes by I don't think of him. Tet is the Vietnamese New Year, and Tet 1968 was a very bloody year, or bloody month. I have been back to Vietnam twice since, both during Tet, and have made friends with my former enemies, good friends, other poets and fiction writers from their side. Tet, 1968, 2015, a Valentine. Clouds heaped 3 tiers high on the horizon. Lightning whitens the chambers tier by tier all the way up and again. Thunder like, arc light, bombing and more flashes. They're coming, the colonel said. If you get a heavy concentration of mortars on target or not, they're coming. Arc light along the ridge. There. And seconds later, the rumble with its hooves clattering toward me through the trees, safeties clicked off like a chatter of cicadas. They're coming. Hear their hoof beats. See the silhouettes of their helmets beneath the camouflage. Flash and crunch, walking them in on us. Flash, shrapnel skittering through the trees, brings down leaves. But now they lean their long faces over the fence. I unhook the gate and go in. They come toward me one by one. I rub them just below the mane, and Merlin, the whole big myth reel of him, grabs my pocket flap with his teeth as if it were a tangled clump of brush that must come off. He grooms me like one of his own. This is love. They are coming. The thunder of them, the soft eye big enough to free fall into the way of the gods. The car, the ears straight up and listening, better than any human listening. I wander among them and greet them one by one, 32 of them. When they run, thunder like arc light. They thunder like myth. The clouds lift tier by tier all the way up, flash and flash again. And the rain, fragrant in the earth. They are coming, and they are full of love and enchantment. The war that is happening always everywhere stops. Their heartbeats like arc light, sending. The slow pulse of them, the knowing. Wings. Been so long since I've been loved, even touched, I told her, with no pity in my voice, just fact. And she reached over and took my hand in both of hers and felt deftly its several bones and worn gristle that held them in place, as if she were holding a bird that hit a glass door, to feel it come back to life in her hands. When I lived in South Amherst, I used to go to this little cafe. I can't remember, the Cushman Store. You know, anybody who lives in Amherst knows what I'm talking about. The Cushman Store Cafe. And I'd go in there and sit, and the acoustics were not wonderful. So I'd get everybody's conversation just bouncing off the walls, and everybody's caffeinated. You know, like, so these phrases are flying through the air, and most everybody in there is super literate. So anyhow, one day I made a poem out of that experience, and it's called "My Longing Feels Like a Train with No Brakes." She was manic, pulled a knife on me. Do you think it's time? Lithium, compendium. Fell on my ass twice on the ice. What if there were no lawyers? The Horkheimer essay is pretty clear. Biodiversity is all up in our face. Politics is white noise while corporations panic in the shadows. Even the army's afraid. Little girl wearing a sparkle dress, mother falling asleep over her coffee. No sugar in this cookie. A herpes outbreak lasts typically 10 to 14 days. She said she'd been talking to someone dead 30 years. Don't flush anything down this toilet besides organic waste, and that means you with a tampon. Give me Samhain any old day. Halloween is an invention of people who sell candy. Walls between the worlds are thinnest now. That's the least interesting of the sonnets. Yo, ask Siri to multiply Planck's constant times the ways I love you. She's so intense, I need a buffer to take her in. Why do I need a camera that shoots 10 frames per second? After all those cluster bees, what if in the manner that butterflies grow eyes on their wings, I grew a mirror in my forehead that killed narcissists like Medusa's glance? No underwear, even in this weather, makes her own heat. Talking to you is like getting massaged with sandpaper. Do you need both those plugs for your fucking laptop? Did you order a veggie scramble? Okay, who ordered a veggie scramble? Ugh. I'm going to close with this one. I've been writing about an angel of death, who until recently was this very sardonic guy with a bad sense of humor that I called Mr. Mort, and I stopped liking him. So I turned the angel of death into a woman. In Latino culture, death is a woman. The angel of death. She is here again with her little black car, wings folded and tucked under her sweater, her magenta hair, nose ring, black socks with little skulls. She is taking me for the usual morning ride. See, she says, how the fog hangs below Mount Sugarloaf and the tip appears bright in the sun. See how the old farmer bends to fix his tractor in the field, how the river resists the ice that crusts near the bank, how even in fog the colors persist, the leaves hanging on for one more day, another wind. It is not so bad, she says. What you have is the longer death, the dying, the composting of the soul. She drives me up the mountain and we stand overlooking the valley, the river, a snake twisting to shake off the cold, the fields heavy with manure before the first snow. We let the wind carve us into stillness. I want you to get used to me, she says, so when I come for the last time, you won't be frightened. You've seen me before. I was there when you tried to keep a man from bleeding to death. I was there when you could not stand to live another day without the woman who left you. She leads me back down the mountain. And then I'm alone and tasting the first rich coffee of the morning. I smell her perfume the rest of the day. Thank you.
Everybody in Zoom, you're welcome to unmute yourself so that Doug and Jenny can hear your appreciation.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful.
So excellent.
Yeah, very wonderful. Thank you, Doug.
Yeah, beautiful, man.
True as an arrow.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you so much to all of you.
So I'm not going to let you go yet. It's 8:45 here, and I want to have an opportunity to ask you guys some questions. Actually, the one now actually people should probably remute just so that we can keep our eyes on the features. The question I'm going to ask each of you is, what is the question that you wish you would be asked? And what's the answer? Jenny or Doug?
I think that's such a good question. I think that the question that I'm most excited to answer is like, who are you reading or who inspires you? Because I love to think of poetry as a conversation through time and like a dialogue of community. So that's what's closest to my heart, is like, who are we speaking to? Who are we speaking with?
Can I answer that?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm reading Maggie Nelson.
I love Maggie Nelson.
Absolutely amazing writer who has basically created a new form. In Bluets, she has a series of vignettes. They could be vignettes, they could be prose poems, they could be philosophical statements. She weaves in Wittgenstein with the most incredibly heartfelt emotion. She's gender complication. You know, she's a queer woman married to a trans man, and the way she works gender into this is absolutely amazing. She is the most innovative writer I've read in a long time. I'm also reading the Argonauts, which is a memoir. So that's who I'm reading.
Yes, I love the way that she speaks to like to gender in the Argonauts, and Bluets for me too.
Yeah,
I return to that book a lot. So beautiful.
It's something you can reread. You know, like poetry, you can reread it.
Yeah.
So what would it be for you, Jenny, or who would it be?
For me, Anne Carson. I feel so passionately about Anne Carson's work. Her translations, Autobiography of Red changed me, I think, as a person. And now I'm reading Red Doc, which is this sort of sequel to Autobiography of Red. I also felt very moved and changed by Victoria Chang's Obit recently. If you haven't read it, definitely. It's such a beautiful study on grief, and also I think an invention of a new form. And I'm thinking a lot about that, like how do we take other forms and make them poetry? So I think someone else who does that really beautifully is Ilya Kaminsky in Deaf Republic. And I'm sort of planning a class for the fall around that idea. My students are going to go on a text quest and seek out texts, like nonfiction texts that have nothing to do with poetry, but inform their work in some way. So I'm thinking a lot about Rue Kaiser's Book of the Dead and Seamus Heaney's North, but also newer work like also my friend Catherine Nurenberger, who just came out with a book of essays called The Witch of the Eye. But she also does that in her poetry a lot. Her latest poetry collection is called Rue from Boa Editions. And that one takes a lot of like old texts that especially like think about plants as medicine, like plants that were traditionally used as birth control, which I think is really interesting. So yeah, those are the ones that come to mind right now.
Well, those are great. And besides buying Jenny's book or books, you may want to really check those out. The one that I've read a fair amount of is Victoria Chang's Obit, and I heard her read from it on Thursday night. That was really neat. So Doug, for you, the same question. What is the question you would like to be asked? We've got your muted, so.
What is it like to be my age and have a lot of my ego sanded off by reality, and to have fewer boundaries between my life and my writing? How's that for a question?
I'm waiting to hear the answer. It's a great question.
I guess that's what my poems of late are the answer to that. The first one I read tonight. That there's a point where all the masks fall away, or most of the masks fall away. And suddenly the voice clears. And this is new to me. This is new to me. It may be that mortality is closer, and that I'm very conscious of the mathematics of age. And I very much want to have my life have meant something, or in the time I have left to have it mean something.
So Doug, how would you describe the masks that were present in your earlier writing?
Well, there's young asshole Doug, libertine, drunk, pompous, pretentious Doug. That's a mask that I was very happy to let go of.
What did that look like in your writing?
What it looked like in my writing? It means my language is getting simpler in a way. I like one syllable words a lot more than I ever did. I like the bone inside language. There's something about simplicity that is the hardest thing to arrive at. And I guess that's what I want now.
You're just making me think about some of the poems that some of the poets who've been around for many years or who've already gone before us have written towards the end of their lives. And before I hit my 50s, I remember Kenneth Cope's poem To His 50s. And the end of it, he says something like, gotta go now. I'm on to my next decade. And that was just the 60s. So, and as you probably noticed, our average age of this reading is just a little bit higher than at most other readings that you might see. So it's 8:54. Jenny, is there anything else you'd like to say? And then Doug, you too after that.
Oh, I'm not sure. I did think of one other book that I'm reading that I would love to recommend just because I'm so in awe of it, which is Diane Seuss's new collection, Frank. But other than that, I just want to say thank you. Thank you to all the poets who read at the open mic, and thanks, Doug, and thank you so much, Nina. It's been a wonderful evening. I appreciate you.
Jenny, I won't be able to get your hospital poem out of my head ever. It's a wonderful poem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all. Buy their books, maybe even, send them some money on their whatever it was, Venmo, PayPal, buy their books. And I hope to see you all, or not see you if you're out on YouTube, in our next several readings before we go back live. Thank you so much. And by the way, just a shout out to Kurt Heinz, without whom we wouldn't be doing.
C'est moi.
Thank you, Kurt.
Thank you all. It's been a swell night. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you, Kurt.
Great evening to have
Thank you,
get to share with
everybody.
everyone.
Thank you.
Great.
And the rest of you, had a wonderful evening.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. All right, Kurt, let's hang out when everyone's gone, if we may.
I hope your new computer.
All righty. Just beautiful. Just